Welcome back to yet another NTI day. Today is day 27 of our NTI experience. Lesson 37. I can find the product, that's the answer to a multiplication problem, the product of a whole number and a mixed number by using the distributive property. An example of a problem like that is 5 times 4 and 3/4. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 5 times 4 and 3/4. Now, it said distributive property. Hopefully you remember the example I gave back, looks like 2 or 3, who remember how long ago it was, but the distributive property. We have a distributive property. I was thinking about like this. I told you, if I walked into the classroom and I had a stack of papers in my hand, and I saw a student, and say I walked up to, say, Radavion, and I said, here you go, buddy. Can you distribute these papers to each student? What he would do is he would pass out a paper to every student. So when I say distributive property, what we're looking at something like, I'm going to say 3 times 4 plus 2. I'm just making this problem up. And when he would distribute it, what it means is he's going to pass out that 3. He's going to distribute the 3 to the 4 and to the 2. So he would say, well, 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 2 is 6. Then he'd add those together, and you'd get 18. That's a distributive property. We're going to use that concept right there to solve problems like 5 times 4 and 3/4. All right. Now, I have already had a question earlier today, someone who was working a little bit ahead, and asked, Mr. Wessner, I don't know how to do problem number 1. And guess what? It says, draw a tape diagram to show 2 ways to represent 2 units of 4 2/3. Ignore the tape diagrams. We're not in school. Right now, I want you to know how to solve these problems, and they're really not that difficult. So we're going to skip the drawing the tape diagram, but you do have something that says 2 units of, I'm going to underline the word of, 4 2/3. I'm getting ready to give you some information that will last you all through math forever. When you see the word of, you think multiply. When you see the word of, you think multiply. Of equals multiply. So what I'm really doing is I'm multiplying 2 of is multiply, so times 4 2/3. Of is multiply. Now, once again, when you get your homework, I don't want to see you don't have to draw out any tape diagrams. Do not draw any tape diagrams. You know how I'll know if you watch this video? Is if you drew a tape diagram. Because I'm not trying to waste your time. So let's look back at our problem. We've got 2 times 4 2/3. I'm just going to solve this because the second part of that problem says write a multiplication expression to match each tape diagram. Well, what we're going to do here is we're just going to say 2 times 4 2/3. Now, let's spend some time looking just at the 4 2/3 part right here. 4 2/3. 4 2/3 is the exact same thing as 4 plus 2/3, right? 4 2/3 is 4 plus 2/3. We just broke it down. So in between there, where there wasn't a plus sign, I just added a little plus sign in there. We just decompose that. Now, when I see that 4 2/3, I'm going to say, well, I've got 2 times, and now I'll put my parentheses here. This should look a lot like what I was just showing in the distributive property problem. Let me erase my little lines here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute, let me get a different color marker, that 2 as 2 times 4, and also 2 times 2 2/3. So let's just write this. I've got 2 times 4 plus 2 times 2/3. Now I just have two problems to solve. Well, what's 2 times 4? Well, we should all know our 2's. 2 times 4 is going to give me 8. Plus, what's 2 times 2/3? Well, remember from yesterday, 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2 wholes. And so now I just multiply my numerator times my numerator, which is 2 times 2 is 4. And my denominator times my denominator, 1 times 3 is 3. So now I've got 8 plus 4/3. But look, right here's an improper fraction. So we can just, I could use the cowboy way. And I could, or this is actually the same thing as 1 1/3. I know my handwriting's getting a little sloppy here. So I'm going to have 8 plus 1 1/3. And 8 plus 1 equals 9. Because I add that to the 1 to the 8. And leaves me with 1/3. So my answer is going to be 9 1/3. That's how we solve this. And that's all you're going to do. That's actually all you're going to do for the next 2 days. As I'm erasing this, I'll go ahead and tell you, I'm not recording a lesson tomorrow because this is the same thing. If you need help with this, just go ahead and watch this video. Matter of fact, I'll put a note in the beginning of the video that'll tell you if this is the next day, just go ahead and skip to this timestamp. So, let's go ahead and we're just going to practice solving. Now, if you look at problem 2A on your guided practice, 2A is actually already worked out for you. You can examine that problem, see how they did it, or you will just watch and we're just going to solve B, C, and D. And first one, we've got 2B. And that says 2 times 4 and 2/3. 2 times 4 and 2/3. Well, let's remember 4 and 2/3 is the same thing as 4 plus 2/3. I'll put a little parentheses around that because we'll combine those, but we'll put 4 plus 2/3. 4 and 2/3 is the exact same thing as 4 plus 2/3. And now I've got my 2. So 2 times 4 plus 2/3. Well, now let's just go ahead and use our distributive property. Our 2 times 4 and our 2 times 2/3. 2 times 4 and our 2 times 2/3. Well, 2 times 4 plus 2 times 2/3. Well, we already said that 2 times 4 equals 8. What's 2 times 2/3? Well, it's the same thing as over 1. 2 times 2 is 4. And 1 times 3 is 3. And we worked this improper fraction out earlier, and we already know that this is the same thing as 1 1/3. Because 3 goes into 4 one time with a remainder of 1. So I've got 8 plus 1 1/3. And 8 plus 1 is 9. And 1/3 is my answer. 9 1/3. That's all we're doing. We break this down, we decompose this, then we solve our 2 multiplication problems, and then we add them up. But then I'm going to have to probably do some cowboy way right here at the very end on that improper fraction. And just add them together. So these are there's just a few steps to these, but the math should not be too hard. I'm going to solve C and D. And then there's your lesson for the next 2 days. This is C. We have got 3 times 2 5/8. 2 5/8. Let's look at this 2 5/8 first. And we know that's the same thing as, but in parentheses, 2 plus 5/8. 2 plus 5/8. Now I bring that 3 down. 3 times 2 plus 5/8. And now, once again, I'm just going to go ahead and distribute the 3 to both the 2 and the 5/8. So I've got 3 times 2 plus 3 times 5/8. Sorry, I had it kind of crooked. You couldn't see it. Now 3 times 2 is going to give me 6 plus, well, that's 3 over 1. 3 times 5 is 15. 1 times 8 is 8. So 6 plus 15/8. And I know that this is an improper fraction because my numerator is larger than my denominator. And how many times will 8 go into 15? It goes in there. Well, 8 times 1 is 8, and 8 times 2 is 16. That's too much. That's just barely too much. So it's going to be 6 plus 1 times 1 7/8. Now just add those whole numbers together. It's going to be 7 7/8. 7 7/8 is my final answer. Now, the first few times you do this, it might take you a little while. But I promise you, by the time you finish your lesson on Wednesday, or tomorrow's Wednesday, on Thursday, this will be easy. Just doing more and more practice with this. Let's go ahead and do 2D. And let's call it a day. 2D. We have 2 times 4 7/10. 2 times 4 7/10. Well, I can go ahead and that's a step ahead right here with the 2. I put it in parentheses. I can always say, well, 2 times 4 is 8 plus, and let's go ahead and put this parentheses. 2 times 7/10. Well, that's 2 times 7/10. 2 times 7/10. Well, that's 2 over 1. 2 times 7 is 14. And 1 times 10 is 10. So now I've got 8 plus 14/10. 8 plus 14/10. Well, 14 is larger than 10. I've got a numerator that's larger than my denominator. So I'm going to say, well, let's make this into a mixed, an improper fraction into a mixed number. So 10 goes into 14. How many times? Well, 10 times 1 is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. 20 is too big, so it's going to go in there. It's got 8 plus 1 time. And 14 minus 10 is 4. 4/10. And 8 plus 1 is 9. And 4/10. There we go. The only thing extra you're going to have to do here is if you look on that back page, on both your homework and on your guide to practice, that last problem on there, oh no, it's one of those scary word problems. Woo! But in the story, in this one says, for one dance costume, Saisha, there's that name again, Saisha needs 4 2/3 feet of ribbon. How much ribbon does she need for 5 identical costumes? Guess what? I've got a whole number and a mixed number. We're multiplying. And I'm just going to do 5 times 4 2/3. Just multiply it out and solve it at the bottom. Or like you have that for your homework. You have the same thing on your homework. Because I'm not doing a lesson on, I'm not going to record a lesson tomorrow night, lesson 28, the learning target's the exact same thing. I said I can find the product of a whole number and a mixed number using the distributive property. This is the same. This is just more practice. The only difference is they didn't give you boxes to work in. There's not boxes. So go ahead and just solve these. Problem 2A says 7 times 8 2/5. I'm just multiplying the same way I did there. And then the back page of your homework is going to, on tomorrow night, is just going to have some word problems. You can do this. Just make sure you follow these steps. If you have to rewatch this, I will have a Zoom this afternoon at noon on, so that'll be April 29th at 12 o'clock noon. I'll have a Zoom session. You'll find the invitation on Class After Class Dojo. Hope to see everybody there. I'll answer any questions you need. I'll solve more problems. I'll have my whiteboard with me. So on that note, you all have a nice day. And Stella wanted me to say this because she heard me say something that's kind of Tiger King-esque. She wanted me to say, hello, dogs and cats. I don't know what this means, but hopefully you all have figured this out by now. Stella's a little on the side. She's a little cuckoo. So, But on that note, you all have a nice night, or a nice day, and I will see you soon. Bye.